Good. All right. It is exactly 6:30, and we start on time and we end on time. So I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you so much for coming out on a beautiful evening to join us for a very, very important discussion about safety and security in our district. But let's talk a little bit about what PREP is, because you keep seeing PREP out there. PREP is our Parent Resource Engagement Program. We put it on annually, and we identify relevant topics to our community and to our parents. And then we try to bring in relevant speakers or groups to come in and talk about those topics. Our focus this year is obviously on school safety. We'll be focusing on parenting, mental health, as well as cyber safety or online safety. And of course, we will then culminate the school year with our annual Evening with the Superintendent event in April. A couple housekeeping items. Note cards were available when you came in. So if throughout the course of the discussion, if you have a specific question that comes up, please write it down, because we'd like to address those questions at the end at our Q&A time. But we do ask that you put a contact phone or email, so in the event that we don't get to all of the questions, someone can follow up with you directly. Also, we ask that those questions be relatively general in nature. If you have a question that's very specific to your child, you might want to address that with the principal first, or maybe following the event, speak with someone individually. So we want to speak in general terms. At this point, I would like to go ahead, before I introduce our panel members, I'd like to introduce any members of the school board, as well as Dr. Smith's cabinet that might be in the audience. So if you would please stand so you could be recognized. So thank you so much. All right, we've got, well, you can sit down. I'll just say who we've got. We've got Mrs. Wendy Mustin from the school board, Mrs. Stephanie LaPlante, the director of early childhood, Ms. Kara Niemeyer, the director of the Office of Exceptional Learners, and Ms. Sean Bush, the director of student services. We're also fortunate to have our 4 secondary principals here with us this evening, and they'll be providing any support if specific questions arise around the secondary level. So at this point, it is my pleasure to introduce members of our panel. You should see some familiar faces up here. We will start, since we're going to come back to you, we'll start here on the left. We've got Dr. Grant Nesbitt, who is our Director of Operations. We've got Mr. Roger Smith, who is our Chief Operations Officer. You all know Dr. Smith, and we're going to come back to him. We've got Officer Jim Parrish, who's our Director of Security. We've got Commander Josh Barker from IMPD. He's the commander of the Northeast District, as well as Chief David Hoffman, who is the Chief of Police for the City of Lawrence. And we'll be talking some about the fantastic collaboration we have with area law enforcement. So at this time, I would like to introduce our Superintendent of Schools, the man that makes it all happen here in Lawrence Township, Dr. Sean Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Altmeyer. And let's give Dr. Altmeyer a big round of applause. She is our all communicator for the district. So parents, when you get social media and any communications from the district, that is Dr. Altmeyer. She does a great job for us. And she's going to be adding another member to our family here soon, real soon. So we're excited for her. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. I know you could be doing other things, but you're very concerned about your students. This is why you're here. And we are too. This evening is about you, sharing what we do in terms of safety and security. And honestly, when you think about our community, our schools are some of the largest facilities in this community. They're safe zones, and Roger will talk about that. They're safe zones when we have natural catastrophes. So we want to make sure that everyone in the community fully understands what we do to make your children safe. And that's a huge task with 16,000 students and the millions and millions of square feet of building we have, Roger Smith. And so that's what this is all about tonight. You're going to find out we have a tremendous collaboration with these gentlemen here to my left. We know them personally. We communicate with them, and they are our safety officials. I think we ought to give them another big round of applause. They have a difficult job of protecting us and making sure we're safe. We have some guys in the back. And for those of you who don't know, we even have some animal friends back in the back who are on our faculty. And so their trainers are here. So our safety dogs are here also. So thank you, gentlemen, for bringing them. I'm looking out in the room and Trustee Steve Talley, glad you can be with us here. He's an elected official, very important to us as our township trustee and joining us tonight. I communicate regularly with the mayor of Lawrence because we're in 2 municipalities. And we also know the mayor of Indianapolis. But ladies and gentlemen, we have here a team that are directly responsible for making sure that our schools are very safe. And we have some very specific things that we do. We can't tell you all of our secrets, and we'll talk in generalities, but we have a lot of safety and security that is in our school corporation. We are part of the community. So when something happens in the community, we typically find out about it right away. We also have 16,000 students with many, many needs. And our job and the people in this room, all these great leaders we have, is to ensure that these kids are safe and well educated and on to graduation. And we do that, and we hope we do it very well. So this is going to be interactive. At some point, we're going to ask you if you have questions of us. Some of you sent questions in advance, and we've got answers to those. And then others who may have questions, that's what we want to do tonight. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable and understanding what your team is doing to make sure that our schools are very safe. Okay? Dana, you want me to hand it off to Roger Smith? Mr. Smith, who is my chief of operation. He has direct responsibility for safety and security, correct?
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I've got to first thank the community out there for an excellent start of this year. Safety starts at home. Talking about it, encouraging your students about what's right and what's wrong. And that comes to our school district. And we have 21 sites throughout our district. And throughout those, safety and security is a priority for our district. And any given day throughout the course of the school year, we have over 25 safety officers throughout our district. That's at the high schools, at the middle schools, and roaming around and monitoring our elementary schools. So we have a lot of eyes and ears. One thing, too, we're going to talk a little bit about the collaboration we have. We have a lot of officers that are out and about on a daily basis that may just stop into our schools because they know our staff. They know our children. And that's a great relationship we need to have. Also, the safety and security within our buildings over the course of, it's been many years with the safety and security, but the governor put out this year about metal detecting and was able to afford school districts some metal wanding, metal detectors. I have to say to our community, that's a good thing for us to use, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing this year. But anyway, we have been metal detecting in large events over 3 years now. So it's not anything new to our people who come to our facilities. But again, it's just another step of safety and security that we're putting in place. As a result of the governor, we also implemented metal searches at a random each and every day. So our students who are coming into our facilities at the secondary level, we random search. So again, just another way that we can ensure the safety of all of our students and our staff. The other thing we have, I think we're 5 years into it now with our dogs. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we do have 2 dogs within our district that we utilize as a proactive measure. Not because bad things are happening in our buildings. We're finding out as a result of having them, it's been a proactive measure and educating our staff and students that we're sending a message, don't bring it into our buildings. And that has been working. So to say to our community, we are doing, I feel, an excellent job in doing what we can do from the safety and security standpoint of keeping our students and staff safe each and every day. And I want to turn it over to Jim Parrish, our Director of Security, and he's going to talk a little bit about the collaboration that we have with our local police and other safety areas within our district.
Thank you, Roger. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for letting me be here with you tonight. As Roger said with the dogs, Matt, if you want to come down as I'm talking, please. The dogs have been introduced into the school, and like you said, they're not used to scare off or hurt anyone. It's to encourage people not to bring things into our schools. The school district teaming up with the police departments locally just didn't happen overnight. I'll take it back to when I started with Lawrence Township as a security officer at a football game, 1979. And I've worked on and off with the district since then. Started at Lawrence Central at football games and basketball games. As the community changed and times have changed, we saw security needs grow larger and larger each year. As Roger said, we have 25 officers in the district. I now employ over 50 IMPD and Lawrence police officers as security officers part-time. And that is working real well. We are able to exchange information. That's what we need in the community. They tell us what's going on in the street. We tell them what's going on in our district. It's been a great relationship. We've expanded that over to Castle Square Mall, Washington Township Schools, and Warren Township Schools that we have at least twice a year, a roundtable, all meeting and discussing what's going on in our schools. So that has really been a great source of information. Our dogs, we acquired them through a grant from K9 for Cops. Lawrence Township and Waco, Texas were the two pilots for that program. We did such a great job with Matt's documentation, we were able to secure a second dog with Nico, and we have shared him with the police department, and Chief Hoffman from Lawrence has shared his officers with us, which I'll turn him over there to talk about our dogs.
I think probably the best people to speak about their canine partners are the actual officers themselves. So I'll give you guys just a little bit of time. Introduce yourself and your partners.
Good evening. I'm Officer Matt Brandenburg, as Jim and Chief said. This is my partner Nico. He's about to be 4 years old. He's a Vizsla. Nico. That's his friend back there, as you can tell. They work really great together. Nico's primarily focused on EOD, which is a more generalized term. He does guns, bombs, explosives, ammunition, anything that might go boom. That's what we're trained for. We got him from Houston, Texas. Yeah, I'm talking. You don't have to be shy. He came from Houston, Texas, and I spent the better part of 5 weeks down there training with him, and I was able to bring him home. He lives with me every day, works with me every day at shift. You can tell he's pretty much my shadow, and I feel as strongly for him as he does for me, I'm sure. But we've had great success with them on the street. Fortunately for everyone here, like they said before, the fact that we're not finding anything isn't a bad thing. That's a good thing. We don't want to find what we're trained to do in our schools, and that's something we want to continue. So with that, I'll turn it over to Officer Hickey.
Thank you, Matt. And I'm the other Matt Hickey, and this is Axel. And as you can see, Axel has his school ID tag on, because not only does he work with the police department, he is owned by the school, and we got him through a grant for these gentlemen up here. So Axel thanks them for that. And his primary mission is narcotics detection. Probably about 50% of what Axel does is visual deterrent, and he also opens up a lot of dialogue with our students. You can go to any of the high schools, and I know, ask them, and they'll ask who Axel is, and they'll tell you who he is. He also finds lost children, senior runaways, and he finds evidence. He searches for evidence. But his primary mission is working in the schools. He's extremely social. He interacts with the students very well. They all love him. The staff loves him. He knows who has the treats in the schools. And so he goes to work. He was actually in Afghanistan for 2 tours with the military, and we got him through the grant program, and now he works for the Township School District. and the local police department too, assisting officers.
All right, great job, guys. So I'll stand if you don't mind. I'm a little more comfortable than speaking in a seated position. My name's Dave Hoffman. I'm the chief of the Lawrence Police Department. We have 63 sworn police officers and about 30 reserve officers on duty who, you know, it's our number one goal to provide safety in our community. And what we see in the community is a reflection, I think, of sometimes what we might see in our schools, because let's face it, the kids who attend these schools live in the immediate area for the most part. And I ask my officers constantly, I want them to focus on guns, drugs, violent criminals with warrants, and do everything in their everything in their power to reduce not only the statistical occurrence of crime, but the fear of crime. And I heard it mentioned earlier, and I think it's particularly compelling of a thought that students can't possibly be expected to come to school and focus on their education when they are in fear. And they have a right to be, because if you watch the national news on any given night, there are incidents at schools that are occurring. And we all I know are in the same mindset that the priority one is safety of our facilities, our buses, our kids at bus stops out in the community. So, you know, something else I wanted to mention, in Jim Parrish here, you have a former chief of the Lawrence Police Department. So this is a gentleman whose first career was all about law enforcement. So he knows what the issues are. We talk all the time. We see each other at events. And I don't know, I could probably drone on and on about some of the things that we're really focused on right now. In addition to hiring 8 officers, which is the largest single hiring session in Lawrence's history, which brought us up to full staff, we're also doing things like wearing body-worn cameras. And we're trying to build that trust and accountability that people expect of police officers. The national dialogue right now is not great, let's face it, with police departments and officers and the citizens that we serve. So we do a lot of things where we try to engage the community, not just in our schools, but in our vulnerable neighborhoods, with our vulnerable populations. We just recently hired a community engagement officer who's the former director of the state of Indiana Commission on Latino and Hispanic affairs. And for us to get that kind of a person on staff with the Lawrence Police Department is fantastic, because she knows how to communicate to an underrepresented population in our community. And I say that because I want to say, and forgive me if I'm wrong and you can correct me, I think about 20% of our students in Lawrence Township Schools are of Latino or Hispanic heritage. So I will kind of stop talking now and introduce you to my colleague, Commander Josh Barker, who I've known for 15 years probably. He's my colleague to the IMPD North District. No, he's not a chief, but he functions very much as a chief on the North District, and that is the district that many Lawrence Township schools are located in. We also work very closely with the IMPD officers on the East District as well, to our south. So without further ado, here you are.
Well, good evening. So I think the common thread throughout the evening here, you're going to hear words like collaboration, proactive, progressive. That's everything you want to hear. I'm a parent myself. I have a 10 and a 5-year-old, and those are the terms that I want to hear as a parent to feel confident about the safety and security of my kids while they go to school, right? Like the chief said, I'm Josh Barker. I command the North District of Indianapolis Police Department. So some of you may or may not know, some of the Lawrence Township schools fall on the chief's jurisdiction, and some of the schools fall on my jurisdiction, and even others fall on the East District. So this is a great team up here. It's a team I'm proud to be a part of. We have things in place from my perspective that are going kind of that extra mile to ensure the safety and security of your students, not just while they're on Lawrence Township campuses, but what can we do in a collaborative manner to keep that safety and security as they move back out into the community where more traditional policing is occurring. I empower my officers and I urge my officers to do the visits to the number of schools that fall within our jurisdiction. Because God forbid if something were to happen, I don't want it to be the first time for our officers to be visiting that school and be unfamiliar with where to enter, where the offices are, where the school, where do the kids have the the recess, where's the lunchroom, things like that. Something small, but as the chief said, that also gives us an opportunity to help build that trust and legitimacy and recognition with the students in some of the schools, because this uniform is not always a representation of something that is makes people comfortable and confident. And it's unfortunate, but some of our students live in some of the more challenged neighborhoods in the city of Indianapolis. And so I think what you've heard up here is, how can we make sure that for the time and the hours that are spent in school, can they kind of check that at the door and make sure they're going to have a good experience here? And that's important to me to ensure that I'm doing everything possible from a collaborative standpoint to make sure that that bleeds over when they go home. I like to think that anytime you ask a North District officer, what's one thing Commander Barker always says, it's he wants us to police for the community and with the community, not at the community. I think the team up here is a very good representation of how we are trying to police with you and police for you, specifically as it pertains to your young ones while they're at school. Jim mentioned some of the collaborations that are specific to North District. We've made great strides. Not that we weren't doing a good job before, but just those little adjustments along the way that have given us an opportunity to maintain that dialogue and share that information to make sure we're holding one another accountable, so that if I have something that is going to benefit Lawrence Township about a community-based issue that has a very high propensity to bleed over into the schools, it's incumbent upon me and important to me to share that information with Jim, so that not just the security aspect is aware of it, but those wraparound services, right? The counselors, all those people are aware of that, so that they can proactively engage those children to make sure that while they're on the school grounds, they're maintaining their own personal safety, and that helps ensure the safety of the other kids. I'm very proud of the partnership we've had with Castleton Square Mall that he mentioned. I have Lawrence Township Schools, Washington Township Schools, IPS schools, and then I have Burbuff, Cathedral, several different private and public school entities on North District. It's crucial for us to share and engage with those partners that draw large crowds of young people, not for bad things, to do what kids do, right? That's what we want them to do. We want to go out. We want them to go out. We want them to socialize. We just want them to do it safely. And I think that's where I'm the most proud of the collaboration we've had between Lawrence Townships and IMPD at this point is we're keeping the dialogue open beyond the scope of just the square footage of the schools to make sure that we can do everything that we can to remain collaborative, proactive, and progressive when it comes to the safety and security of your kids. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Commander Barker. At this time, if you had a note card that you filled out with a specific question, if you would hold it up, someone will be coming around to get it. And also, I would be remiss if I did not mention our friends that are providing our live stream this evening. Our friends at Town Post Network, they are providing a live stream of the event for those unable to be here with us, or if you wish to go back and review this presentation later. And they're also collecting some questions. So we may have some questions that come in virtually as well, as that's an interactive dialogue. So while those questions are picked up and sorted, we did receive several in advance. So we'll go ahead and address those, and then we'll take the questions from the audience. The first question is from an early learning center and elementary parent who says, I have heard of other local school districts who are considering allowing police to have satellite offices in schools, some of whom have police officers that actually eat lunch in the cafeteria with students. Are satellite offices something that the district has ever considered?
I would welcome any time that we can have our first responders in our building. We do not currently have satellite offices in our building at the present time. That could be a great dialogue as we move forward. However, the 25 people, security officers that we do have in our district are police and fire that are part of our safety team. And as a result of that builds a great relationship. And also, they know our staff and they know our buildings. So if we were to have a critical response, these people who work in our buildings on a day-to-day basis know our facilities quite well.
Okay. Our second question is also from an early learning center and elementary parent. I am aware that LT currently does lockdown drills. Do drills also talk about run, hide, fight, or evacuate if a safe option?
We do have a plan. It's kind of modified from that, that the staff in each building is given several different plans and options for whatever the threat may be, whether it is man-made, a tornado weather, or any other event that might take place. They have 2 or 3 options that they can use to either evacuate their kids upon direction also of the building administrator, or to normally we want them to stay in their rooms and shelter in.
All right, thank you. Our third question is from an early learning center parent. When it comes to the safety of our children, a huge concern is around those with special needs. What specific measures or training are or will be taken to ensure that these students are as safe as their peers? And for this question, we've actually asked Mrs. Karen Niemeyer, our Director of Exceptional Learners, to come to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Currently, we do utilize a program called Nonviolent Crisis Intervention Training. This particular training is also known as NCI training. We are extremely fortunate within the district to have 6 trainers, and actually 2 of our trainers are our officers. And within the training, there are 2 components. One of them is de-escalation strategies, which is how we work on decelerating behavior and concerning behavior. The other element, and this last one is a last resort, is physical interventions. And there are very specific measures and training that we do and very specific types of holds that can be done that are utilized if we are dealing with a dangerous situation or a violent situation. One of the key components is if we do have to utilize these strategies, we do have a debriefing session because we want to be preventative in all cases and at all times. We do have students who are identified with exceptional needs that at times need some very specific plans, and those are developed by not only the staff but the parents as well. And we do review those plans sometimes at a yearly, if not more frequent basis. And as we review those plans, there are times there's some specific training for that particular student need that we will utilize and offer to the staff.
Thank you so much. The next question submitted was from a parent with an elementary, a middle, and a high school student. What is our district doing to address students being bullied, sexually harassed, or who are feeling unsafe due to sexual preference? To answer this question, we have our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Schombush.
Hello. To answer the question regarding students who may feel unsafe due to their sexual preference, we want all of our students to feel safe, regardless of race, religion, sexual preference, any of those things. So whether or not that identity struggle is related to sexual preference or religion or race, we always want to we encourage our staff to build relationships so that students feel comfortable enough that if there is an issue that needs to be addressed, they know that they have someone there in the building that they can go to. Lawrence Township, the Metropolitan School District of Lawrence Township in particular, I think a lot of people, I know, being in student services and seeing the families that come in and ask questions about our district and what it is that we have to offer. Many people seek us out because of the diversity and the inclusiveness of Lawrence Township. So I think that is not something that we have had extenuating issue with, because as things come up, we certainly have protocols and rules in place, some of which are mandated by the state. So there are certain educational pieces that we have to present to staff and students regarding bullying, sexual harassment, and those items that Dr. Altmeyer mentioned. So it's just what we do, and no matter what, we want our kids to feel safe, and it's something that we pride ourselves in, as you've heard from the panel tonight.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Bush. And the last question we had submitted in advance is from an elementary parent who asks, what tips can we give our children at home regarding safety while at school?
Safety starts at home, there's no doubt. It starts at a young age. Safety and security is a learned behavior that as parents we must teach our kids. It starts with on how they act at home, the rules of the house. Those rules will carry on into the schools as not opening doors for somebody you don't know. If we can teach that at home, they won't be opening our school doors to let someone else in that they don't know particularly. Stranger danger, when we push them out the first day of school, teach them not to go up to cars or strangers approach them, to run to the bus stop, run back home, run to an adult they know, and to report it. That goes back to school. We have administrators that are there for the students if they're being bullied sexually or threatened harm to their body. Go to the administrator and tell them. So it's a learned behavior, and we must reinforce that every day to the young kids. They'll learn it, they'll carry it on. And if we got older kids, we have to remind them the same thing as they grow older as well.
All right, and now we have several questions from the audience that we will be going through. The first is from a middle school parent who asks, how does Lawrence Township's safety system compare with area districts, or are safety systems regularly compared?
You want me to answer that since I've worked at I'll answer that since I've worked at multiple school corporations. They're all very similar. We have a very strong partnership with our local police. Some school corporations actually have their own separate police force. And I've worked in both corporations, and I really can't make a comparison between them other than to say most of our school corporations around us are very large, and they have similar safety and security issues, and so they're all very safe. And I can speak of that because I've worked across the north side of Indianapolis in 3 school corporations, Pike, Washington, and Lawrence Township.
All right, thank you. The next question is from a parent that asks, how or when will schools be required to practice or begin to implement the ALICE drill?
We're currently using part of ALICE right now, and that's a choice that our staff has. For example, some of our classrooms have multiple exits. And as we go through our safety and security plans, we talk about the options that we have in place. We're not training our staff currently in the full ALICE. We have been talking about that, and as we move forward, we constantly want to give our staff all the opportunities and really opportunities for keeping our kids safe, whether it's on a defense or evacuation.
What is ALICE?
An ALICE is a form of defense in the classroom. Run, fight, hide, as you had heard earlier. And there's different measures that ALICE trains our staff to do in place. Part of that is going against an intruder, and defense could be blocking the doorway. It could be building a wall out of desks and protecting themselves behind that, all the way to evacuating the building from an alternate route if they have that opportunity.
All right, thank you. The next question is there any self-defense training available in our schools? Now, I don't know if that's specific to staff or to students, but the question was, if the person is in the audience and would like to clarify, we'd be happy to. But is self-defense training available in schools?
Yeah, we don't have directly self-defense classes in school. We do have a course that's a CPI, which is for staff. What that is to teach the staff when a student becomes unruly, how they can address that student with usually one or more staff members with them. how they hold them, direct them without hurting them. And most of our staff are getting certified in that as we talk today.
Okay, thank you. This parent has concerns about the posting of students' names on school doors. And so by school doors, I'm assuming they mean outside of the classroom. Is this something that the district has ever reviewed or considered? Please, yeah.
What I'm talking about is the names on outside of the school building. Like, I'm an adoptive parent, and last year I was kind of like really surprised that all of the class names were on the front of the building. And so we had to go to the building to see what classroom our daughter was in. And as an adoptive parent, I don't know, I'm just a little, obviously I'm protective of my daughter. And so for anybody to be able to walk up to the building and see her name up there, I don't know, it just made me feel uncomfortable. I just was kind of surprised that that's how we find out that what classroom she's in. This is the second year, she's in second grade now.
Okay.
So, kindergarten, we were, told her name wasn't on the door. But in first and second grade, I was just it kind of bothered me that anybody could go up and just not know what classroom she's in and know that she's in the building. So when you're talking about security, I was like, now anybody knows my daughter's there.
Okay.
Now, this year I didn't see that. Last year I did come across that. I addressed it with the principal that I understand what she was doing, but to move that sign inside the building where just anybody coming up to the door could not read it. So they were advised to move it inside. So once you were cleared to go into our building, then you could look and see where your child is.
Right in the outside door.
Correct.
The whole school.
So.
Okay. Thank you. And that might warrant follow-up conversation as well. Thank you very much. We have a question. Well, maybe our officers can handle this one. How often and how do the dogs sweep the schools?
I thought you directed it to.
Well, either whoever wants to answer, that's fine. The question was, how and how often do the dogs sweep the schools?
The dogs sweep the schools daily. We have them in secondary schools every day. They have kind of a pattern that they run during lunchtime. That way they're not distracting any of the learning day. So lunchtime, they're in there. They're going through lockers, checking any book bags just laying around the buildings.
All right. Thank you. How many officers are in a school?
So I can name.
How many officers are in a school building?
We have several officers in the school. That's the best answer I can give you. I won't give up our secrets of how many, where, when.
Well, and that's one reason I wanted to be sure to ask that. We talked a little bit about how part of our safety preparedness is you don't show your hand. You can't talk about every single detail, and it's for safety reasons.
We do have armed and unarmed security in each building. So, and all of the security team for Lawrence Township are first responders, which either they're police officers, firefighters, or EMTs. That way, if anything did occur in our building, we've already got them in the building. They're able then to reach out to responding units of the departments responsible for that jurisdiction and let them know what they're coming into.
All right. Thank you. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, those security officers, that extends beyond the close of the traditional school day, correct?
Yeah, we're extended hours past the school day. We're at all the events. A lot of holidays, I still have people there just to protect the buildings when they're empty even, so prevent vandalism.
We pretty much run from 6:30 to 10:30 at night with security. Sporting events, we have several officers that will help assist us. And I talked about the metal detection. So those large events, both athletics as well as performing arts, we do utilize that security method in place.
During some holidays or just off days when the school's out during the school year, we do run some 24-hour security at the schools as well.
All right. Does Lawrence Township have any kind of active shooter protocol?
Active shooter protocol.
Active shooter protocol is what the question says.
Emergency.
Yeah.
Every building has an emergency preparedness plan, and in that plan, it addresses active shooter, fire, tornado, earthquake, biohazardous, chemical hazardous type of events that could happen in and around our community, especially with 465, Lawrence Central being close to that, even Lawrence North. And if something happened there, what would that school do in case that situation occurred? So those plans are addressed and reviewed every year.
Along with that, we gave each building enough go bags, as we call them, to put in each classroom. In there is for them to put a class roster. They have different colored emblems for everything's okay, it's not okay. In there also is a pamphlet that, as Mr. Smith said there, they can turn to it, whatever the disaster or emergency is, and it gives them about a 10-step rule to follow.
All right, we're doing really well on time, and those were the questions that were submitted. I'll go ahead and open it up. Is there anyone that has a follow-up to any of these questions? Yes, ma'am.
I do. I was the one who asked about the Alice drill.
Okay.
I have a nephew who was in the 7th grade situation at Noble West, so that hit really close to home. So having, part of my question wanted to be with, now that, it is a reality and it's so close, what is, or can we, or will we be getting plans of, because I know with my niece and my nephew in Noblesville schools, elementary and the Noble West, those kids on a regular basis practice Alice drills where they have a go-to church in the nearby neighborhood where they are evacuated from kindergarten to 8th grade. They knew exactly what to do, where to go, because if you saw the news, some kids were out at gym and they did go to the neighborhoods and they had to go get them and say, bring them back and say, okay, now we have to take them to the high school. Like I said, it's all the way down to kindergarten. I have a sister who teaches in the elementary schools over there, and they practice it, they know it, and myself being now in Lawrence, that's on my mind as a teacher, and I'm going through and playing the scenarios out on a regular basis before it even happened here. But as a teacher, it's kind of like if I have my kids at recess, or if I have my kids in the hall or at the restroom, it's kind of like I'm constantly a part of, standards and teaching and keeping everybody in line. That's part of what's running through my mind. Where am I going to go? Who am I going to go to? Where's my safe place to keep these babies safe with me? So that's my question is, are we going to have a plan of action of how to and where to go in case there is an active shooter?
Okay, currently our plan is that we shelter in place. We have the Columbine locks on all of our doors in the school building, which no one can get a key and make that entry. The teacher would have to release the door themselves. Plan is, number one, they shelter in place, away from the door, try to cover the windows. They're to stay in place until law enforcement and the administrator of that building goes room by room to get the occupants out at that time.
Okay.
In our emergency preparedness plans, you talked about evacuation locations. Most of our buildings, if not all of them, do have plans on where to go if certain situations were to occur. You mentioned a good point, is practice makes perfect, and we could always do more. We can never do enough. So that constant conversation and reminder within our buildings, we talk about it often, but could we do more? Absolutely.
We do all the mandated drills by the state and the fire marshal monthly.
Oh, I would say we have incredible leaders in our schools, our principals, and our staff. And I just hope that we know our students and we prevent something from happening. And that's knowing your kids. And so as I look around the room, I see our secondary principals are here, our elementary principals, and all down the line, that we know our students and make sure that we do everything possible to make sure nothing will happen. Okay, because the Noblesville incident was internal. We're so used to the outside coming into the school, we forgot about the kids that we have in our buildings, and that's important to know your students.
Yes, ma'am.
Our children specifically brought to the principal, disregarded initially, or until more parents came forward because the threat of miscarriages to that action was taken. However, from our standpoint, we're saying, what is that action? We weren't getting that communication. And for parents, it makes us it's very unnerving to not know, what is your plan of action? I need to know. Please tell me. Because is it effective? Like she mentioned, is it good practice? And so, granted, you guys have your external systems put in place, but something's happening on the inside, and you guys aren't even aware of the communication systems or parents telling you all what's going on. So it's knowing your students, but that kind of was missed, and thank God nothing happened. But for us, it's terrifying. It was really, really terrifying. So what kind of communication are we sending to parents so that we can just
Okay. Oh, no, I'm repeating it so that we can all hear it. Okay, so your question is about specific communication from the school to parents in the event of an internal situation. Okay.
I don't think that's not what we're saying. And I hate to point out a specific school. I'm not sure. I don't know which school you're referring to. And we have to be real specific with the guys that are up here on the stage and our leaders. I don't know what building you're talking about. If we have an incident that occurs in this district, you're going to hear from us that we know about it. You're saying that the school didn't know anything about it. You brought it to the principal's attention.
Okay.
And it was disregarded. Okay. You need to see me afterwards.
Then, yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. If that happens, unacceptable for our schools. I've served as a building principal. Parents are my number one resource of information. They would call me and tell me when things happen in the community. Please do that. I want everyone out there on Facebook to hear that. If something happens, let us know about it. Don't leave us hanging out there because we're going to respond to it. But I want to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah. And so then that's just also a general reminder. If you have a specific incident in mind, we do want to address those, but those might be better for once we adjourn the large group. Yes, ma'am.
About, are you guys planning to do something similar as far as house drill monthly or however you do your house drill for the actual student training and the staff being trained and all of that before the students? Are they actually going to be starting some type of training?
We have had that conversation, Jim and I, and with several administrators. So as we train our I think we have about 45 school safety specialists trained in our buildings. And as we're moving forward, a lot more conversation about Alice is being had. So there's certain pieces in there that, I'll be honest, I don't like from a standpoint of the age of the kids and what we are training them to do. However, there's a lot of options in there. And that's what I referred to earlier, is giving our staff options. That's what it's all about. And Alice is an option. And coupled with our other emergency preparedness plan procedures, I think as we move forward, we're gonna do more of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Questions. So first is I'm hearing a lot of collaboration, but I'm not hearing collaboration with mental health. And a lot of the children that have impacted these schools, both internally and externally, have had some mental health concerns and challenges. So what else is being done beyond gallery services where folks are paying attention, giving attention, servicing young people in the school who perhaps are isolated or not interacting with other peers in a healthy way is the first question. Secondly, as a licensed clinical social worker and having a high school student, in my home currently. I am also noticing he has some significant concerns that the officers do not reflect his particular community. And I'm wondering, is it possible for another collaboration to happen where officers are talking with small groups of young men as to how to behave, how to respond when officers are addressing them? If there is a fight at school, what are they expected to do? Because generally, African American children are going to run. And what happens when they run? There's several reactions by officers when those children run. So I'd really like to know, is it possible for officers to collaborate with our young men so that they too can feel comfortable sharing information? I also had an experience where my son was telling me he's got a friend bringing things to school, bringing a weapon to school because they didn't feel safe. But I asked him to tell the officer if that ever happened to tell the officer. He was like, no, I can't do that. I don't feel comfortable talking to that officer because of an interaction he had overheard. It wasn't even to do with him. So 2 questions: mental health support, and then smaller group conversations with officers so that young men will feel more comfortable coming to you with community information to help you
Okay. The questions were around mental health, prevention, awareness, and then also around creating positive relationships between students and police officers that can help mitigate possible issues.
The Department of Student Services has family liaisons and communities and schools liaisons who very specifically focus. Most of them are social workers. Most of them are trained social workers. We also have some of them who have background in criminal justice, background in counseling. Some have background in education. But we are this department, the Department of Student Services, is growing because of that need for additional mental health support. Our Mrs. Niemeyer is here as well because, as you know, Gallahue is our mental health provider for our schools. But outside of that, one of our challenges, and as I speak with directors of student services from other districts, is not unique to Lawrence Township. One of the challenges, not just locally, but nationally, is how do we get the level of mental health support to students that's actually needed. Mental health is very real, and one of the hurdles is family education. There's a lot of stigma, particularly in the African American community, and oftentimes we don't want to seek out. We have families that don't want to seek out that help. And you know, the answer to that question is multi-layered. And it's something that we work on continuously. But the simple answer to that is our official mental health service provider is Gallahue, and we do have Gallahue therapists in each school. Do you want to say anything else about Gallahue?
I was just going to say we're very fortunate to be able to also utilize Gallahue because they do provide trauma-informed care training for our teachers. And currently we are working on several elements of that as a way we can go to a deeper level and try to do even more specific training with the different types of things that we're seeing. And we're also able to utilize some other individuals within our schools who are in an advisor lead role and utilizing them to help work with groups of students and develop some relationships and work on some of those social skills pieces and understanding other elements of behavior and how to act and how to react as well.
I also wanted to share that very recently we just received a Fairbanks grant, a Prevention Matters grant, and I was able again to add another staff member just this week who will be a family liaison that is focused on substance abuse prevention and violence prevention, because many of us may know that, mental health and substance abuse, there's a lot of crossover there. And so we will have a person at our secondary schools, at the middle and high schools, who is very specifically focused on providing support in a preventive way. I mean, of course, we want this person to be working for prevention, But the fact that the person that's in this role is currently a substance abuse therapist, and does have experience with the juvenile courts and with violence prevention and some other layers like that will assist us in this. It's something that we're always working on, and we're very fortunate in Lawrence Township that we're able to grow this area because we do see the need as so great.
To kind of follow up with Commander Barker a while ago and Chief Hoffman, being from IPD originally, now Chief of Lawrence, they bring a lot to the table for the township. They have so many outside counselors and so many other groups that can jump in and help us with a part of that we have that at our disposal as well. The part about having policemen as mentors, I think that's why we're trying to get more of them to stop in at lunchtime right now. We don't have roll call sites set up, but most of the officers that work for me, which is about 50 from both groups, are mentoring or getting along with the kids. They're recognizing them in school. They're recognizing them on the street. That comfort, they're becoming more comfort with each other. That comes with time. Unfortunately, we've got parents out here that tell our students, don't talk to the police, be away from them. We need more of parents reinforcing, work with the police. They need to approach us as we need to approach them. And that's something we'll keep working on every day. So hopefully we can break that barrier.
Were you about to add something, Roger? No? Okay.
Oh,
Mr. Smith, you just looked like you were about to say something. I just didn't want to interrupt you.
I wanted to talk about our first responders. When I say first responders, our police and medic. And we get a lot of feedback that the relationship that our staff builds with their kids is encouraged every day. And a lot of our PSOs have that good relationship. And we constantly encourage that to take place. Not only with our safety and security, but all staff within our building. Having those relationships with our kids is extremely important. And majority of our safety concerns are kids bringing that information to our adults. So we know that it is working in our buildings because time and time again, we respond as a result of a student or child telling an adult within our building something's taken place. And we can then intervene and assist those before the situation occurs.
Are the officers CIT trained, or we have more officers trained to deal with mental health issues with students?
Yeah,
The question was if the officers are trained to deal with mental health issues.
Yeah, what we're finding in law enforcement in general in our community, I would imagine it is mirrored in the schools, is that so many of our bad behaviors are motivated by mental health concerns. We see it time and time again with suicidal people who decide that they want to commit crimes and then end their own lives. We see that constantly. We have, and I know I don't want to speak totally for IMPD, but behavioral health is a really big trend right now in law enforcement. Police officers identifying precursors to violent behavior. We every time, for example, that we administer Narcan to someone experiencing an opioid overdose, the next day they're getting a phone call from somebody at the Lawrence Police Department, a community engagement officer, to make sure that substance abuse resources are at least offered. Every time that we conduct an immediate detention, and an immediate detention, for those of you that don't know, is a situation, it's an effort that an officer can essentially take somebody against their will to a mental health facility because they are either a threat to themselves or they are a threat to somebody else. And so every immediate detention that we administer gets a follow-up phone call to either the person who's the subject of the immediate detention or to that family. So our goal is, and my goal, and I know Commander Barker agrees, is let's get these the highest at-risk behaviors and characteristics, let's get them addressed in a mental health setting rather than in the criminal justice setting. The Marion County Jail right now is the #1 prescriber of psychotropic drugs in the county per capita with their population. And you know, that should be telling that a lot of our people who are going through the criminal justice system have either dual diagnosis or single diagnosis issues, that if we can just divert them and get them resources that we need, that's going to be one less person in the middle of the night walking through a neighborhood firing a rifle, at a lot of times at officers. And we know that's happened. We've seen a lot of incidents, maybe not to that extreme, but I think you all know what I'm talking about. So that's our philosophy. Crisis intervention training is a big part of that, teaching our officers how to maybe de-escalate a situation, to not rush in, to assess a little bit better. Having them work very closely with our partners over at Community Health Network we have seen success in it. So do you want to elaborate any further on that? So I don't expect police officers to be licensed clinical social workers, but I do expect them to have the basic foundation of identifying somebody whose behavior, while outwardly possibly criminal, may also be motivated by either substance abuse or a psychological disorder that can be helped in a clinical setting rather than a correctional setting.
Kind of follow up Chief Hoffman, and I think that was the first thing that we've had to start training in, is getting all of our staff to be able to identify that person. And that's what we're doing now. So it's slow, but we're getting there.
We have time for a couple more. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Because this happened. As far as I know, the only thing that comes out is the school-wide listserv call. But is there anything else that, like, hey, we have a fire drill, parents, this is happening in our school, and then what's the next step as far as what parents need to do? I'm sure every parent calls in at that point to your school saying, what's going on? What do I need to come and get my kid? There just hasn't been a lot of communication as far as when something were to happen safety-wise, then what are the parents going to do?
So just to clarify, you're asking about, not about a scheduled fire drill, but in the event that a fire alarm is pulled or a school goes on an internal lockdown or something of that matter, how is that then communicated to families? Well, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. I was about to say, let me start, and then they can always elaborate if need be. Generally speaking, if we have a situation like that, it's obviously brought to Officer Parrish's attention, and he will let me know. He will let me know so that the building administrator can be dealing with students and parents and families and addressing whatever that situation is, whether it's, evacuating the building because of a fire drill or making sure that every student is safe because there's a community incident that's required that the school go on a lockdown. And I will then, to assist them, put out that all call, the robocall that you're referring to parents, and let them know that whatever the situation is, that the school is, I'm going to use the lockdown as an example, that the school is under lockdown. And then once we're informed that lockdown is lifted, I'll do a follow-up phone call. Now, that's obviously assuming that I'm immediately looped in, but I think we've done a pretty good job of making sure that communication chain is in place. Am I missing anything, gentlemen?
No, and I kind of follow you up. I don't know of any incidents that's not been reported. All of our building administrators, if there was a fire alarm pulled or something happened at that, even though it's not real, but kids got excited because kids are immediately texting parents. So you guys are getting it from the kids. They're always putting something out about it. And I don't know, I would encourage everyone to make sure, do they have the proper or the right phone numbers to make the calls? This society changes numbers quite a bit. I'm not saying that's your case, but I would tell you to go back to your school, make sure they have the correct numbers. Our staff, the principals, are putting that out as soon as something happens. And anymore, that's been the priority one. As soon as they can neutralize it, most of them are at their desk putting this call out to the parents. So I would encourage you to make sure that your number is correct in our system.
It's not so much about communication, like, yes, when it happens, but, like, prior to something happening, like at the beginning of the school year, for example, nothing is said as far as if this were to happen, this is what our protocols are.
Okay, so you're saying in the event that a fire alarm was pulled, you can expect that to receive a phone call from the principal or from my office so that you're informed. So you're talking about that kind of preventative communication. Okay. Well, that's something that we can certainly look at. There's no reason that that's not something that we could definitely talk about and then communicate, because it's a practice that we already have in place anyway. Just making sure that families know about it at the beginning of the school year, that they can expect that communication. All right. Yes, sir. Oh.
Outside of school, and maybe police are involved, or the media is involved, or something like that. Does the school get notified about that student?
That I want to turn that over to Mr. Parrish.
Yeah, great question. Yes, anything that a child's involved in outside of school, by state law, the departments are supposed to report it to the schools. Fortunately enough, I'm on staff here, so I'm following about every police run that goes out. Chief Hoffman allows me to have that pleasure there, so that works for the school, but we're pretty much notified most of what's going on. And depending on what the incident is, that can determine whether that student returns to school or not. Does that answer your question?
All right. I think we were able to cover all the questions from the audience. So at this point, what I'd like to do is we will go ahead and wrap up. And then if you have a follow-up question or need to speak with one of these gentlemen individually, you are certainly more than welcome to do so. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this evening. And thank you again to Town Post Network for providing the live stream of the event. While I've got you here, I do want you to know that our next prep event is on September 18th, and it will be here. Again, our auditoriums are currently at the high schools undergoing some fantastic renovations and will be gorgeous and ready for us soon enough. But our next one will be here as well. And it will feature Mr. Robert Jackson, who's a national speaker, and he'll be talking about parenting tips for reaching today's youth. So at this time, if we could give our panel members a round of applause. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening, gentlemen. And we will go ahead and close. So thank you so much for being here with us.